What is up, Ministry Refuel Podcast? My name is Kat Robbins. I'm your host for today, and I have a very special guest here with me, as you can see. It's my bestie, Christian Baylis. Man, she's amazing. Say hey to everybody.
What's up, y'all?
Sorry, that sounded demanding, and I didn't mean for it to sound demanding.
You're good. I'm used to it.
If you listened to season 1, you probably heard a little bit about some of mine and Christian's history with ministry and friendship and just all that we've learned throughout our time together. We've had a bomb threat at our conference. We told that story the last time. We've dealt with just crazy things in ministry, and it seems to continue to happen. And I just brought you, 1, because you're amazing, but 2, because Christian is brilliant as it pertains to mental health. And so I just want to kind of talk about some of the things that we've had the opportunity to learn in ministry and how we've chosen to grow from that. Yeah. So I would love to just start by telling how we used to not like each other at all, how we hated each other. So why don't you tell everyone about how you hated me?
I never hated her, correction. But we were in ministry school together. Kat had already been there a couple of years.
Just a couple.
And then I came in, and I came from, I was homeschooled, so, and I'm the youngest of 3 children. So I was used to having my own space and kind of how I did things, and being homeschooled, you're kind of separated from like the way that the rest of the world kind of does life. So I was just kind of used to that environment, and then I come into school and I'm in dorms with all these girls, and I'm like, what the heck, like what's happening? And the thing about Kat is that Kat is very like, she's a very inclusive person. So she's kind of like, I want everybody to be a part. I want to know everything. And Kat immediately, correct me if I'm wrong, like she wanted to get to know me. And she wanted to like, what is this girl about? And I was like, whoa, I'm not used to that. I wasn't used to that type of experience. And so yeah, there was kind of like, I put some distance. We also had we'd had like a run-in of something like that was really small, and then it just kind of grew, and then like all of a sudden like all these people just kind of started getting on this bandwagon of like, let's just be against Kat, so I just kind of got pushed into that. I was never against her. I was just in it, and then I was just like, oh, okay, so now we're best friends. That's the most important part.
The moral of the story is you can always be friends with somebody. Even if you hate them right now, there can always be more.
Redemption.
I mean, straight up redemption.
Right.
And I feel like as much as we might not have been able to stand each other at one point in time, now we're just living in the fruit of like having such a intentional and fruitful friendship, and also just ministry partnership. And even now that we're kind of working in different, bless you.
Sorry, thank you.
different facets of ministry, we're learning how to even support each other from afar. And so I would just love for you to kind of speak into that as far as like friendships in ministry. How can people who are watching, who are either in full-time ministry or Christian leadership, what does consistent friendship and ministry partnership look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's important to say that ministry, like doing ministry, you're not supposed to do it alone. I think there's seasons where God may have you walk through doing something alone, but I think that God also honors you having friendship and having people around you. And so to think that, well, I'm just going to do it on my own, I don't need anybody, that is, you're good?
I'm good. All right.
That's not going to get you anywhere. And I learned that very early on in ministry. I started doing ministry full time at 17. So I needed people. There was a lot of times where I was lonely in doing ministry all by myself, and it was overwhelming. It was very mind-boggling. It was very there were times where I felt very depressed. I felt very alone because ministry is hard. It's not easy. There are really difficult parts of it. Though there are amazing times of ministry, there are also really difficult times. And when you're able to have those people to lean on to say, hey, like these are just ideas that I have, or I just need prayer, I need words of wisdom, like those things are so vital and important. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love Kat and I's relationship, is because though we may be in different sectors of ministry, there's also times where we've prayed together, there's times we cried together, there's times where, you know, you can voice frustration or get ideas, be creative, you know, together and things of that nature. And so I think it's so important that you have those people in ministry that you can lean on, because it's not meant to do alone. And there's so much of ministry that is about people and doing life with people, and so it's so important to have those people that you're also, as a leader, doing with others around you.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but would you say that ministry friendships are one of the most vital things to keep you going long term in Christian ministry and leadership?
Yes, most definitely. Because I think, like, I have friends who aren't in ministry and they're amazing. I love them. But I think that there's something so special when you have friends when you are in ministry, because they get it. You know, it's kind of like if I'm in the military and then, like, I have my crew of people who are also in the military with me, it's very different than doing life with civilians, because it's just different. You live different. The things that you encounter are different. So being able to have people who are in ministry, there's a similarity there and an understanding. And maybe even like a respect there that's just different, because, like, they get it and they understand that world as well. So I think it's so important that you have those friendships with you, because it can be a lot trying to do everything by yourself. And
absolutely.
That's not how God created us. He didn't mean for us to do it alone. So
that's so true. And I think a lot of ministry friendships kind of add to this concept that I like to call the BO principle. And a good friend tells you when you got BO. Yes. A good friend tells you if you got something in your teeth. A good friend tells you if your zipper's down. And if we live our lives just constantly by ourselves, our heads down, and we're running forward in ministry, we don't have those people who will come alongside of us and be like, hey, bro, you have something in your teeth. Yeah. Hey, your zipper's down. You look a fool right now. Yeah. And what I love about our friendship, and I hope some of the friendships of the people who are listening and watching right now, that you have people who are coming alongside of you and having those difficult conversations. And let me tell you something, that's one of the most supportive things that someone can do for you. Yeah. I know that you're real good at speaking in truth towards me. You come to me and you don't candy coat.
I try not to.
I mean, and we talked about this last episode, you don't even think I'm funny, like in the slightest, you know? And so you just keep me very, very grounded in my life. And that's one of the things I cherish most about you, is that if I'm out of line, I know you're going to come and you're going to tell me and let me know. But that's why these friendships are so vital, because so often we can just be running our race and not fully paying attention to what we're actually walking in. Yeah. And we're not even paying attention to the fact that we might be walking in something that could lead us to our greatest demise. And that's why I think it's so important that you surround yourself with people who, you know, are that support to you. And I love that you pointed out that not necessarily all of your close friendships are in, you know, full-time ministry. So we have a mutual bestie, Bethany. Bethany, if you're listening or watching, we love you so much. She just says it how it is. And I know that if we bring a situation to her that maybe we're overthinking or even over spiritualizing in some ways, she's just so good at defining black and white and just making it really plain to us. And so as a person in ministry, don't feel like I have to only listen to other people who are in ministry, because there's something valuable about getting differing perspectives, because there are people who have those different perspectives who are looking at it from an angle that you may not be considering. And so it's so wise to let in wise counsel. They may not have a pastor in front of their name, they may not have a deacon in front of their name, a prophetess in front of their name, but at the end of the day, if they're a God-fearing person and they care about you, they're worth having in your life. And that's why I think it's so valuable. Christian, we've just been through a lot in ministry as I consider our friendship and all the different stories that we've been through. One of the big things that really like comes to mind in our friendship is going through a season of me getting let go. And just not expecting that. And truly, that was one of the most painful moments of my life. A little bit of my portion of the story, and I would love for you to speak into it, was I had grown up in a particular area and basically was offered my dream job at one point, and I thought it was perfect. I thought it was wonderful. So I picked up, I left everything that was comfortable. I moved away, got away from everyone and everything in my life that felt comfortable, and went somewhere and was there for about a year and went through a lot of trauma, if I can be honest, a lot of difficulties through that season. And, you know, basically towards the end of that experience, I was offered the opportunity to kind of give an evaluation and share what I thought about the experience, what I thought about that year on staff. And I was pretty honest, and I think that's what they said they wanted from me. And what ended up happening was I was called into an office with my direct report and the director of HR. And basically my boss looked me in the eye and said, hey, you know, I have no good reason to fire you. I just know that this is not part of God's plan. Looking back at that now, I'm like, thank you, Lord, for your graciousness to let me go and go and be the best person that I could possibly be and be in the season that I'm in now. But obviously there was a lot of behind the scenes pain that would come after that decision. And truly one of the greatest assets that I had in my life in that moment was my friendship with you. Because, you know, not to really get into the semantics of the situation, just because, hey, we've gone through healing and getting rid of some bitterness. But in that situation, unfortunately, the place that employed me went to people that I had influenced and said, do not contact her. Do not have any communication with her whatsoever. And so I had kind of not turned away, but I had kind of walked away from everything that was comfortable to a new place. And then the new place rejected me in a lot of ways. And so like my friendship with you, I think got even stronger in that season, and my mental health continued to thrive because of that. And I know that you have a portion of that story as well, that you walked through in that season too.
Yeah, it was the season that I would say we were at the same place. So though we worked in two different areas of ministry, we were both at the same location. So that was it was kind of cool. It was a kind of cool setup, because rarely are you going to work with your best friend, like to be like, my office is here, your office is there. Hey, you know, like you rarely have that. So it was one of those things that it was like, this has to be a God thing, because this just doesn't happen. And I would say to the level of ministry that I was doing, someone at my age at that time I hadn't heard of was doing that level of ministry. So it was really cool just to be like, God, you allowed this door to open for me to do ministry in a way I never even thought possible or honestly had ever thought of. But it was also I went through a season where I was there and I didn't know what God was calling me to, but I knew that He was stirring my heart towards something else. And so me and my current boss at the time, we would have all these conversations back and forth about what God was calling me to. And I remember this specific conversation that he and I had, and he shared with me, he was like, what God is calling you to, I just don't think it will ever fit within this place. And so I'm like, okay, cool. And so I remember he sent me a text message and he said, hey, if you could write down everything you do in your job. Now, what I was being paid for oftentimes looked very different than what I was doing, because I was doing a lot more than what I was necessarily being paid for. And so I did it, and I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, okay, he just wants to know. And long story short, we wound up having a conversation, and very similar to Kat's situation, I was let go from my job months later after her. And it was crazy because the Lord had told me like about 3 or 4 weeks before that He was about to transition me. But in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm getting a raise. I'm gonna be doing like I'm moving
you
up.
Thought you ate.
Right. I'm like, I'm moving up, you know? And then this happens and I'm like, what the heck? Like, what is happening? But I mean, it was a God thing now, like I look at it, and even in the moment I knew because God had already kind of prepared my heart. But I mean, I think what the cool part was is similar to what Kat was saying, was that she had just gone through that, you know, a few months before. So there was that relatability, and it kind of goes back to the beginning of the conversation, what we were saying of like, you have to have it, not have to, but I do think have to have friends who are in ministry, because it just is different. It's I'm telling you, I compare ministry sometimes to literally being in war, because sometimes you feel like that. No, that's like real. That's because real. You're dealing with people's lives, like, you know, their spiritual growth and things that they go through life oftentimes comes into ministry that you're having to really pray through and lead and guide through and things of that nature. And so it was really important during that season to be able to have someone who had just gone through that situation, but also have somebody that, like, when there were days I was just like, today just stinks, like, I actually have somebody that I can say that to, and stuff like that. So it was great to just be able to have a person during that season. Yeah, and I think a lot of times, biblically speaking, when we think about friendships, the first people that come to mind are David and Jonathan. Mm-hmm. And what I love about David and Jonathan's relationship was that if you just look, you know, logistically speaking, Jonathan should have been next in line for the throne, you know, just as far as the bloodline went. And Jonathan should have been the next king in line. Jonathan should have, you know, been treated with the utmost care. But Jonathan put aside what was due for him. Jonathan put aside everything that he could have walked in a spirit of entitlement with. And he said, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to care for you. And I'm with you. I'm with you heart and soul. I'm with you all the way. Yeah. And I love that spirit of Jonathan that saw, like, my brother's in trouble. And I love this person more than I love my own desires or, again, the things that I feel that I'm entitled to. Yeah. And I really feel like through our friendship and even some of the other friendships that you and I have had with other people on the outside, it's really just learning. I might feel that I'm entitled to some things. I might feel that I'm owed some things. But when I put those things to the side, when I come into relationship with people and I look at people and I love them for who they are and I care more about their needs than what I feel like I'm owed, something shifts. Yeah. Something changes. And I just love that. And I just remind everybody at home and me, because there's a lot of letters that are going to be in your name one day that I can't remember. You're in school for counseling. So tell everybody what. I'm in school for clinical mental health counseling. Clinical, and so what letters will you have? An LPC. She makes it seem like I'm about to be a doctor. You gotta be honest. Some people got the MSNBC. And They do. So yeah, I'm in school for a master's in clinical mental health counseling. And so yes, that's what I'm working towards. That's what she's working towards. Yeah. She's gonna be there very soon, and she's working very hard to get there. But obviously, like, mental health is a hot topic, just across the board. And I feel like it's really just starting to surface in the church realm for whatever reason. I don't know why it took so long to get here. You know, we're a little behind. We are. You know, we've moved past singing "Shout to the Lord," but we're not into therapy yet. So, but you know, at least we don't have the flags. Well, I mean, some churches may still have the flags. Go for it. But we have moved on in some areas. You know, I'm not even going to comment on the flags. Kat loves flag ministry. I do. It's her favorite. If you want to start a flag ministry, hit me up. My phone number will be linked in the bio. No, but for real. What were we talking about? Mental health. Yes. Yeah, so the church, and that could be a whole other podcast, that sometimes the church can be a little bit behind. We love our girl, the church, but sometimes the people living with her are just a little... There's something. They're a little outdated. Yeah, that, again, I tell people, church people are different. They're different than your regular civilians. They're different. It's its own world.
Yeah, and church always attracts like
different people.
Mm-hmm. Y'all know. If y'all go to church, y'all know.
You know, you got the person that's, you know, got the bird on their shoulder in church. It's, you know.
You know. So, with our last couple minutes together, let's just talk about mental health and how it pertains to the people who are watching, who are listening. What are just some really practical steps?
When thinking about mental health, I think something that's super important is you could start by getting a therapist. No shameless plugs here, but I do think that having a therapist is vital. A lot of people struggle, and they're like, I don't have anyone to talk to. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to tell people what's going on in my life because I don't want to be judged. Well, the cool thing is that a therapist, like, you know, they're paid to listen. That's part of their job. And so I think it's super important to have a therapist. I personally have a therapist, and my therapist has impacted my life in so many amazing ways. I think it's always funny. People say, I don't want a therapist because I don't want to tell people, I don't want to tell a stranger what's going on in my life. But like, then you're also not telling the people that you know. So it's like, you're just holding it all in. So it's just, it's something that's really beneficial. If you need someone to talk to, if you need someone to go to without judgment, that's a great place to start. There's Christian therapists out there. If you are a follower of Jesus Christ, then there are Christian therapists out there that can help and guide you and utilize the Word of God within therapy. Also, some practical things that you could do outside of that realm is you can write. If you like writing, write down some of your thoughts. You can, you know, I'm a person that I like to have alone time. I'm an introvert, and so it's important for me to make sure weekly that I do get that alone time, even if it's a day or half a day, to just be able to just unplug, decompress. Those are some things that you can do. Working out is so vital. If you're a person that you really struggle with maybe expressing your emotions, you maybe even get frustrated often, find yourself being irritated often, going to the gym or doing a workout, doing a run, doing something in the morning at your house, like, those things are so vital and important. And one of the most simplest things that you could do when it comes to your mental health is going to sleep. Like, if you don't have a regular bedtime, if you stay up till 2 a.m. and then you get up for work at 6, there's a problem. And that's going to eventually catch up with you, and it's going to eventually cause issues, and your brain's not going to be all over the place. Your life's gonna be all over the place.
Yeah.
And so it's important that you get your rest. Eating, like, people don't understand that, like, like your rest, what you eat, like, those things affect your mental health.
Absolutely.
You know, if your space, whether that be your car, whether that be your bedroom, your house, if it's all out of order, not clean, all out of whack, it can impact your mental health.
Yeah.
You have to be able to have your space that is clean, that is, you know, that feels safe and comfortable for you. And the last thing I would kind of go back to what we were talking about with having friends, but is having those people that you feel safe with.
Yeah.
If you have those people around you that you feel safe with, that you can express what's going on, whether that be good or bad, whether that be emotional or not emotional, you know, like, no matter who you are and where you sit in life, it's important that you have that safe space where you can express the thoughts in your mind and things that you feel, but also a safe place where you could be yourself. Like, because that's so important, because so many people live in environments where they don't feel safe to be themselves, and so actually that starts impacting how they see the world and how they experience the world, because they have no space where they're actually able to really be who they are and who God has called and created them to be. And so that's important, that you have that safe space where you can be yourself and be able to be open and share what's on your heart and mind, because it impacts you. It can impact you in such a positive way when you have that.
That's so good. And thank you for just getting practical, because I think sometimes, again, in spiritual context, we get to this point where we go very spiritual with things, which is good, but there's also a very, like, practical side of things. Like you said, like, what are you eating? How much are you sleeping at night? Like, very basic things that we probably don't really give a whole lot of thought to could be some of the major contributing factors as to why we're feeling perhaps the way we're feeling.
Yeah.
I know for me, like, when you had mentioned working out, like, The days that I work out versus the days that I do not work out, I can tell in my mental. The days that I'm walking around eating a bunch of junk food versus the days that I'm intentional to take my vitamins, drink my greens, do all that good stuff. Like, I notice the difference.
Yeah.
And I think it really starts with, and you know, you got a lot of education to back up your knowledge, but I feel like it starts with just knowing yourself.
Yeah.
You have to know, you know, last week on the or a couple weeks ago on the podcast, we talked about knowing your capacity, knowing your limits. Like, you have to know, I'm not getting enough sleep. Like, you have to kind of take a self-inventory. Like, hey, I'm only getting 3 hours of sleep a night. Or, hey, I haven't been to therapy yet. And just asking yourself those things. Or, hey, I don't have a really reliable group of friends. Like, and when you start to pay attention to those things and you start to do a self-inventory, you go, maybe it makes sense why I feel a little depressed.
Yeah.
Maybe it makes sense why I've been extra angry lately or extra emotional. And again, of course, we're both women, you know, there's a lot of women listening, and I know there are men listening too, but that's just something we have to pay attention to. Yeah. And so I just encourage you to take Christian's advice in that regard of just get really practical and do an inventory and ask yourself, where am I at with all of these things? Yeah. Because if you are just in a rut with those things and you don't have a routine and you're not intentional about caring for yourself, it's no wonder why you feel stuck and why you feel stuck in the middle of where you're at.
Yeah. Can I speak to something?
Please do.
Yeah. Also, too, like, you know, Kat and I have both been in the I've been in the church since the third day I was born. So, like, I was sitting on the
third day.
Yeah, literally. Like, I have been on front row. My entire life has been ministry, church. I know a lot about church. I've experienced a lot. I've been to a lot of churches and also been on staff and things of that nature. And so I know the church world very, very well. And so with that being said, when it comes to mental health, a lot of times people in ministry are afraid to speak about things that they're struggling with. It's pertaining to mental health. Mm-hmm. And whether that be depression, whether that be anxiety, whether that just being like, I just feel like I have thoughts running all over the place and I just can't get it together. Like, whatever it is, or there are certain people who have specific diagnosis and things of that nature. I want to speak to that and say, like, don't walk in shame. And understand that God has a calling and a purpose for your life, just like someone who doesn't have any type of mental struggles. You know, like, you have a calling on your life that God still can use you despite whatever struggles that you may be having and challenges that you might be having with your mental health. And I think that's something that's just so important, is that so many people walk in shame until they don't speak up. And what happens is a lot of times people are not speaking up and they're struggling because they're in these ministry roles and leadership roles and they feel like they can't speak up. And then what happens is it just continues to get worse into a point where it's like, I just have to back out completely. And so I just want to encourage those that may be struggling, or maybe you've walked through a season or you have a friend who's struggling, is to speak up, get help. Whether that being talking to your leaders, whether that is talking to a counselor, talking to whoever that safe person is, like, get help. Don't just keep ignoring it. Don't just keep denying that it's happening. Like, actually do something about it, because you'll find that you'll be a stronger and better leader when you actually deal with what's happening and deal with what's going on in your life. So
that's so good. Thank you for saying that as well. And I think it's worth mentioning as well, because again, we're talking somewhat in a church context. Yeah. Medicine's not the devil.
Yes.
If you're listening and you would say, Kat, Christian, I've been struggling with anxiety, depression, what have you, and the doctors want to put me on medicine, and I've tried all these other remedies, am I a bad person if I take medicine? Are they a bad person?
Absolutely not.
No. If you have something that, by the way, God has created to help you function so that you can be and function and find happiness and joy in your life and be a better pastor and be a better leader and a parent and a wife or a husband, then do it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you have to be dependent on it, but it's something that can help you through a season so that you can function. It doesn't make you bad. It doesn't make you evil. Right. It's something that can help you. There are people I love very, very much who function on medicine. Yeah. And guess what? I applaud it because that is so that they can function and live their lives well.
Yeah.
And so thank you for just speaking to that and reminding us you have a call in your life.
Yeah.
God has purpose and plan for you. He's put breath in your lungs. There's a reason you're here on the planet. It doesn't mean that you won't have struggles along the way, but man, there's purpose in you.
Definitely.
And I just want to thank you for just speaking honestly to us today.
Of course.
Talking about mental health, one of your favorites.
You know, I love it. Kat and I, we talk about mental health all the time, and I'm a person that likes to study people who've committed severe crimes due to mental health. Yeah, I know that sounds crazy, but I do. I like to study the brain and what gets someone there in trauma and things of that nature. So I can talk about this stuff all day long.
Listen, it's all for psychology. Please don't call the police.
Yes, please, yeah. I just, it's just the brain. I'm just figuring out how the brain works, you know.
That's what they all say. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. This is me and my bestie, Christian Baylis. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for listening. My name is Kat Robbins, and as per usual, thank you for listening to the Ministry Refuel podcast.
Deuces. Thank you for being a friend.